Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome dear learners. This is a video for the subject of education for the course of Bachelor's in Education and for the paper of Child Development and Learning. This particular video is based on children with special needs, and in this first part we will be discussing the different issues and concerns related to children with special needs. This video has been recorded by Dr. Aerum Khan. The course coordinator of this video is Dr. Aerum Khan from Jamia Millia, Islamia, New Delhi. She is also the presenter and subject matter expert for this video. The academic expert or the reviewer for this video is Professor Jasim Ahmed from Jamia Millia, Islamia, New Delhi. This video is produced under the project DTH Swayam Prabha channels of MHRD, New Delhi. Hello my dear students, I am Dr. Aerum Khan, Assistant Professor at IASC Faculty of Education, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Today we are going to talk about a very important topic which is related to children with special needs or CWSN. And in this lecture, we will talk about the different issues and concerns which are related to children with special needs or CWSN. The objectives of this session will be to discuss the meaning and characteristic features of CWSN, or the popular term nowadays for CWSN is Divyangjan. Then we need to explain the details of inclusive education and differentiate between the concepts of impairment, disability, and handicap. We will discuss the different models of disability, and we will describe the various types of disabilities or special needs. So first of all, let us discuss that what exactly this term children with special needs or CWSN mean. Who are the learners with special educational needs? In few of the literature you can find the term, the abbreviation SEN, which stands for special educational needs also. So in India, a learner with special educational needs is defined variously in different documents. For example, a child with special educational need in a district primary education program or DPEP document is defined as a child with disability, namely visual, hearing, locomotor and intellectual. And this definition came in 2001. However, the country report in the NCERT UNESCO regional workshop, this report was titled as Assessment of Needs for Inclusive Education, report of the first regional workshop for SAARC countries in 2000. It states that a special educational need goes beyond physical disability. It also refers to the large population of children in the school age belonging to the group of child labor. There are lots of children who are reported where the groups of child laborers, street children, victims of natural catastrophes and social conflicts, and those who are or who were in extreme social and economic deprivation. These children constitute the bulk of dropouts from the school system. So all these different type of explanations and definitions were given regarding this particular topic, or when it is asked that who are the children with special needs or who are those who require some educational needs which are special in nature. Then The educational requirements of the students who are suffering from any of a wide range of physical disabilities, medical conditions, intellectual difficulties, or emotional problems, including deafness, blindness, dyslexia, then different type of learning disabilities or difficulties in learning, and different behavioral problems. They are also considered as children with special needs. The sixth All India Educational Survey, uh, it was done in year 2000. It also reported that India's 2000 million school age children 6 to 14 years of age was the children who were the sample of this particular sixth All India Educational Survey. 20 million require special educational needs, and this is something which is actually given by the Rehabilitation Council of India, or RCI, in 2000. So on the basis of the sixth All India Educational Survey, RCI got this particular data, and they reported that 20 million of the children were requiring the special needs education. Special education, this word special education is being used like in various situations, and it is something which is nowadays very much emphasized on. So what is special education? So special education is a form of instruction that is designed to meet the needs of students with different type of disabilities, so that they can learn the same skills and information or the knowledge as the other children in school are getting. So that particular type of situation where we are providing that special education in order to meet all those needs of those students who are having any type of disability, so that they come in the same line as the other children's are. So that is basically the special education. Then, according to the International Standard Classification of Education, which is given by ISCED 97 in 1997, and this is published by UNESCO in 1997, the term special needs education, or SNE, means that educational intervention and support designed to address special educational needs is basically the term SNE has come into use as a replacement for the term special education. So the earlier term was mainly understood to refer to the education of children with disabilities that takes place in special schools or instructions distinct from the outside of the institutions of the regular school and university system. So in many countries today, we can see that a large population of disabled children are in fact educated in institutions under the regular system, even in our country. Now we are seeing the scenario where the the students who are having some special needs are also studying in the normal school system. So moreover, the concept of children with special educational needs extends beyond those who may be included in handicapped categories to cover those who are failing in school for a wide variety of reasons that are known to be likely impediments to a child's optimal progress. Whether or not this more broadly defined group of children is in need of additional support. It depends, like these children depend on the extent to which schools need to adapt their curriculum, their teaching, like the teaching styles and the teaching methodology and organization. This is also uh, actually to provide additional human or material resources so as to stimulate the efficient and effective learning for these children. So now let us talk about the concepts of impairment, disability, and handicap. because these are a few of those terms which are normally used whenever we are talking about any type of special need or CWSN children. So it is very much worthwhile in this particular sequence for getting the proper acquaintance with the meaning and use of these terms. These terms have been widely defined and distinguished by a number of writers, scholars, and distinguished organizations. WHO in 1980 has published a article or a publication which was titled as the International Classification of Impairments, Disabilities and Handicap, and they have defined these three terms in their own way, and we are just going to see that what is that special type of definition which was given by WHO. For impairment, they have defined that impairment is defined as a fundamental, structural, psychological, or physiological deficit. For example, disordered motor control in cerebral palsy. Then, in case of disability, they define that disability is defined as the functional deficit that a person experiences as a result of impairment. For example, spasticity interfering with walking. Then in case of handicap, handicap is defined as the disadvantage a person with disability experiences in various societal settings as a result of that disability. For example, people who cannot walk may be denied access to particular places. So these three terms are classified or defined in this way. The discussion, like this particular definitions, have shown that all these three terms are actually related to each other, and they have got a linear relationship, which says that one is leading to the other, and that can be in a manner like impairment leads to disability, disability leads to handicap. This linearity of a relationship may make us to think that it is always essential for an impairment condition to result into disability and the disability condition result into handicap. But we have seen that in most of the cases, and nowadays people are getting aware, and there are a lot of technological interventions and devices and aids. By the help of all those interventions, the people are actually avoiding or they are actually getting rid of their handicap. They are trying to make their lives easier, and they are not actually letting the disability overcome their lives. So this linear relationship is there, but we can't say that it exists in each and every situation. So now there is a term which is very much popular nowadays, and this term is so popular that at times we consider it as the only term related to CWSN. What exactly this term is? It is inclusive education, and we need to understand that what is the meaning of inclusive education, how it is having a broader meaning. So inclusive education implies all young learners, all the young people with or without disabilities being able to learn together through access to common preschools and schools with an appropriate network of support services, which means that here there is no requirement of having students who are having any type of disability. Every single student who is willing to get education, and there is no any bar of caste, creed, religion, gender, any type of barrier should not be there, and every individual is having the right to get proper education. So inclusive education is a much broader term. Now, there is a shift in ideology which we have seen nowadays, where inclusion, the term of inclusion is basically it is given a lot of importance. Inclusion means not only disabled children but also the other children in our context, amongst the poorer segments or the deprived sections of the society who face barriers to learning, like the girl child, the socially and economically disadvantaged children, the child with different or any type of disabilities. So all these people are included. They are put together. They are not actually uh, made devoid of any type of things which are provided to other students. So this is something where we are including them in the mainstream, is basically covered under inclusion. And nowadays we are seeing that this shift in ideology is actually very much prominently showcased. So whenever we talk about the special needs or CWSN, uh, or disability, there are certain models of disability which are used as a tool for defining impairment. How we can categorize a specific type of disability, or how we can actually signify or define a specific type of impairment. And this is done through different models of disability. So we will just go ahead and see that what exactly these models are actually saying. They basically provide a basis upon which government and society can devise strategies for meeting the needs of disabled people. And there is, if you go ahead and see the kind of start, that from where it got its start, we can see a historical progression in this particular area. So the shifting approaches to disability have translated into very diverse policies and different practices. So the various models of disability impose differing responsibilities on the states in terms of action to be taken, and they suggest different changes in the way disability is understood. Different laws and the policies, programs, and rights, and basically different instruments. These are the instruments, like all those laws and policies and programs. They reflect two primary approaches or discourses. The first one is disability as an individual pathology and as a social pathology. So the first one is disability as an individual pathology. The other one is disability as a social pathology. Within these two overriding paradigms, the four major identifiable formulations of disability have been done. So we will now see that what are these four different type of models, which come under this models of disability. So the first model is the charity model. The second one is biocentric model. The third is the functional model. And the fourth is the human rights model. And now we will see all these four models one by one in detail. So the first model is the charity model. And this charity approach gave birth to a model of custodial care, causing extreme isolation and the marginalization of people with disabilities. And unfortunately, in some contemporary practices, the reflection of this model can still be traced. And we have seen that in most of the studies, like there were a lot of studies which were done in the recent past, that a large number of mental health institutions are still being managed and administered on the custodial model of care, which are characterized by prison-like structures with high walls, watchtowers, fenced wards, and locked cells. So these institutions function like detention centers, where persons with mental illness were kept chained, resulting in tragedies. And we have seen that the tragedies were of different types, even the death of the inmates, or having a lot of accidents in the four walls of these institutions. So governments should actually see to it. They have to look into it, and they have to avoid this model, because though it is having a lot of security issues, and it is not a kind of model which is very much humane. So this was the first model. The next model is the biocentric model. The biocentric model of disability regards disability as a medical or genetic condition. The implication remains that disabled persons and their families should strive for normalization through medical cures and miracles. Although biology is no longer the only lens through which disability is viewed in law and policy, it continues to play a prominent role in determining program eligibility, entitlement to benefits, and it also influences access to rights and full social participation. So, a critical analysis of the development of the charity and biocentric models suggests that they have grown out of the vested interests of professionals and the elite to keep the disabled not educable, or declare them mentally retarded or the MR children, and keep them out of the mainstream school system. So, using the special schools as a safety valve for mainstream schools. Inclusive education offers an opportunity to restructure the entire school system with particular reference to the curriculum, pedagogy, assessment, and above all, the meaning of education. So, this inclusive education is such a term or such a phenomenon which is actually very much important. Then comes the functional model. So, in the functional model, entitlement to rights is differentiated according to judgments of individual incapacity and the extent to which a person is perceived as being independent to exercise his or her rights. For example, a child's right to education is dependent on whether or not the child can access the school and participate in the classroom, rather than the obligation being on the school system becoming accessible to children with disabilities. So this is the functional model. Then comes the human rights model. The human rights model positions disability as an important dimension of human culture, and it basically affirms that all human beings are born with certain inalienable rights. The relevant concepts in this model are diversity, then the breaking down barriers, then the equality and non-discrimination, reasonable accommodation, accessibility, equal participation and inclusion, and private and public freedoms. Now let us see that what exactly these concepts, which are the part of the human rights model, are all about. So the first point is diversity. Uh, there is a very famous saying of Aristotle, the Greek philosopher, that things that are alike should be treated alike, whereas things that are unalike should be treated unalike in proportion to their unalikeness. The principle of respect for difference and acceptance of disability as part of human diversity and humanity is important, as disability is a universal feature of the human condition. So uh, this is how we can actually explain diversity. Then the next point, which is breaking down barriers. So policies that are ideologically based on the human rights model start by identifying barriers that restrict disabled persons participation in society. This has shifted the focus in the way environments are arranged. In education, basically, as for example, where individuals were formerly labeled as not educable, the human rights model examines the accessibility of schools in terms of both physical access, like the availability of ramps or the availability of different type of access points to these students, and also the pedagogical strategies. So this is something which is related to breaking down barriers. The third point, which is the equality and non-discrimination. So in international human rights law, equality is founded upon two complementary principles. These principles are non-discrimination and reasonable differentiation. So the doctrine of differentiation is of particular importance to persons with disabilities. Some of these persons may require specialized services or support in order to be placed on a basis of equality with others. Differences of treatment between individuals are not discriminatory if they are based on reasonable and objective justification. So, as we can say that equality not only implies preventing discrimination, like for example, the protection of individuals against unfavorable treatment by introducing anti-discrimination laws. Uh, but it goes far beyond in remedying discrimination. In basically the concrete terms, it means embracing the notion of positive rights, affirmative action, and reasonable accommodation. Then the fourth point is reasonable accommodation. It is important to recognize that reasonable accommodation is a means by which conditions for equal participation can be achieved, and it requires the burden of accommodation to be in proportion to the capacity of the entity. In different documents, we have seen that this reasonable accommodation has been defined, like the definition can be in this way: introduction of necessary and appropriate measures to enable a person with a disability fully to enjoy fundamental rights and freedoms and to have access without prejudice to all structures, processes, public services, goods, information, and other systems. So in this way, different documents, different government released documents define the reasonable accommodation. Then the next point is accessibility. The United Nations Economic and Special Commission for Asia and the Pacific has defined accessibility as the measure of condition of things and services that can readily be reached or used at the physical, visual, auditory, or cognitive, and or like all these can be included, or the cognitive levels. So by people including those with disabilities. So this is something which is defined by the UN, like one of the institutions of UN. Then number 6 is the equal participation and inclusion. So by focusing on the inherent dignity of the human being, the human rights model places the individual at the central stage. So in all decisions affecting this person. So the human rights model respects the autonomy and freedom of choice of the disabled. And also individuals and institutions fundamental to society are enabled to gain the capacity for the free interaction and participation vital to an inclusive society. Uh, then comes the other point, which is private and public freedoms. So the human rights approach to disability on the one hand requires that the state play an active role in enhancing the level of access to public freedoms, and on the other hand it requires that the enjoyment of rights by persons with disabilities is not hampered by third party actors in the private sphere. So educational institutions and industry, both in the public and private sectors, should ensure equitable treatment to persons with disability. So this is all about the human rights model, and all these seven relevant concepts which are given in this model are now actually clear to you, and this can be seen as the reflection of what is to be done through this human rights model. Now let us come towards the types of special children, or the children with special needs, or the Divyang children. So we will just see that what exactly are those different types, or the areas in which the special needs are required, or these children can be classified. So the first type is mentally retarded. The next one is visually impaired, then hearing impaired, then the physically impaired. At times we call them orthopedically handicapped also. Then the learning disabled, and the socially disadvantaged, or the gifted children. And like we have seen that in the near past, like there were lots and lots of amendments which we have seen in the acts for in the act for the special children. And there were a lot of different disabilities, different type of issues and problems. People who are facing these problems are actually added in the list of the those categories which are treated as the category of the special children. But we, because are concerned with the educational aspect of the special children, so we are taking only a few of these points, and we will be discussing or focusing the discussion on these points only. So these were the types of special children. Then uh, in this category, if we start with the physical impairment, or the, at times people say it, orthopedic impairment. So what exactly is characterized under this particular point? So the deformity in neck, hand, fingers, or the waist or legs. So this is the first criteria. Then the difficulty in sitting, standing, or walking. Then the difficulty in picking up or holding objects, putting them at the appropriate place. Then frequently the complaints of joint pains. Then difficulty in holding the pen to write, because we are talking about the educational aspect. So writing, for writing, the person is required to hold the pen or pencil or anything. So difficulty in holding the pen to write. Then walks with jerk. Then the involuntary movements of limbs, or amputed limbs. So all these are characterized under the physical impairment. Then comes the visual impairment, and it, like whenever we are defining, or we are characterizing a person with visual impairment, there will be certain characteristic features which can be observed. So they can be that the observable deformity in eyes, or if we see this person is rubbing the eyes frequently, or frequent reddening of eyes, covers one eyes and tilts the head forward, then holds objects including the book close to his eyes while reading. The book is actually taken more nearer to the eyes, or asks other students for help when taking notes from the blackboard, blinks frequently or squints eyelids together, then watery eyes, complains of headaches, or bumps into people or objects. So all these kind of signs can be seen in a person who is having uh, the visual impairment, any type of problem in actually seeing things. So then we come to the students with hearing and speech impairments. So what are those things which can be observed in those students with hearing and speech impairment? Observable deformity in ears, then frequent discharge from the ears, uh, complain of pain in ears frequently. Then this person scratches ears frequently, turns head on one side to hear better, makes many errors in taking dictations, then displays speech difficulty. So all these come under the students with hearing and speech impairment. Then the students with low mental ability. So the poor academic achievement can be seen in these children. They forget very frequently, inattentive and like they are distracted. Then they seek immediate reward, fear of failure, poor self-image, lack of self-confidence, restricted communication, poor muscular coordination, difficulty in doing things for themselves, then problem in following any of those instructions, then slow pacing, they seek more repetition and practice, too much dependence on concrete examples, then they avoid active participation. And there are many other observable features, but I have actually listed few of them. Then the students with learning disability. This is something which is very much important whenever we are talking about the education and the educational scenario. So the students with learning disability do not read well, like they have got difficulty in reading anything. Then they make mistakes in spelling, they actually make the wrong calculations or numbers, they list the numbers wrongly, then untidy and late in submitting assignments, poor performance in examination, then at times they are very excited about all those things which happen to them, so kind of anxiety is there, then reads individual letters in words and difficulty in actually reading out things. So these were few of those things, and there is a list of activities which they do. Then comes the other category, which is the category of gifted and talented children. These children have the high ability for abstract and symbolic thinking. They have a kind of extraordinary curiosity, large vocabulary. They require few repetitions and limited exposure to learn, special memory, good problem solving ability, long attention span, intense interest in one area, high energy level, dislike of rigid timetable. So all these are the characteristics of the gifted or talented children. So with this we have now reached to the summary of this lecture, and in this lecture we have just seen an overview of or a brief account of all those different type of disabilities which the children with special needs actually have, and it was a brief account, and in different lectures we will talk about all those remedial measures and what exactly we can do for educating these children. So here in this lecture we have seen the national and international perspectives related to the meaning or the definition of children with special needs. Then we have seen that what is inclusive education and what is the importance of inclusive education. We have seen in detail the models of disability, the four major identifiable formulations of disability, which are the charity model, the biocentric model, the functional model, and the human rights model. We have seen all these in detail. Then we have also seen the types and characteristic features of different types of disabilities. So in this lecture we have covered all these things in brief, and we will look ahead in different other lectures about the details of all those different points which we have mentioned here in this lecture. So these are the few references and consulted links which were referred while developing this lecture. You also can go ahead and see that what exactly is new. There are a lot of new things which are happening in this area. Lots of reforms are happening in the forthcoming new education policy. There are a lot of different provisions which are there for making the education very much inclusive and disabled friendly or Divyang friendly. So go ahead and read the references and other literature related to this. I hope that the discussion would be fruitful to you and it is going to help you out in your studies. Let us meet each other in another session. Till then, thank you so much. Dear students, you are watching a video on children with special needs, and in this lecture we discussed about children with special needs, issues and concerns. This video lecture was recorded by faculty at home during the national lockdown period for COVID-19 pandemic using minimal technical resources. Technical errors, if any, are unintentional and may please be ignored. For any queries with regard to this lecture or broadcast, kindly send your email to techsupport@dth.ac.in. Thank you so much.